Hello there, welcome to Bitcoin Design Guide Jam session number 31, the most important event in the world today. That's why we have all these lovely people here joining in. And as usual, we're going to discuss work on the design guide, milestone 16, the never-ending milestone 16, and the currently open tasks, how they're coming along, and how we can wrap them up and whatnot. And thanks for joining. And let me see. Have the roadmap here in the background. We could just hop right in, top to bottom, just kind of discuss where we are. And considering this 3-month, intentionally designed, thought of, hoped for as a 3-week milestone is now a 3-month milestone. It would be good if let's say we're stuck somewhere, we just kind of say, okay, maybe we need to change things up a little bit, work a little bit differently to get through things. And yeah, hopping in, I think the first thing that comes to mind is Stephen's document that he shared in Slack, which let's see, covers the backup, recovery, automatic cloud backup, manual backup, and recovery pages in the guide. I read through it, gave feedback earlier. But Stephen, why don't you tell us something about that, please?
Sure. I'll have to go through and read through the feedback on my own. I think a lot of that materialized while I was sleeping in my time zone. Yeah, so, I mean, this has just been part of a, process to get the backup and recovery pages updated in the guide, which are, for anyone who's not aware, as far. I think everyone on the call probably is, but it's this section right here: backup and recovery, auto cloud backup, manual backup, recovery, and there's a lot of stuff that needed to be fleshed out in the recovery section that wasn't there. And I really wanted to tackle all these together, just because even though it's a large task, there's a lot of content that's kind of like ideas that are shared between these pages, and wanted to make sure that they're all kind of kept in sync with each other. So in order to, get that done, I basically I've been working in Figma and sharing my progress on that over the past month or so. So I think that, a lot of you have already provided comments on the actual frames, but in terms of actually getting the pages updated, I basically just laid out all 4 pages in a document from top to bottom here. There's a lot of new content here. I mean, I repurposed a lot of the old stuff, but, there was I was finding like little nuggets of redundant content between the pages and stuff that didn't really mesh with the concept of the daily spending wallet. So it's just kind of a, top to bottom redo of the whole section. And, it basically, you'll see it follows the same structure here. Backup and recovery, that's like the intro page. You got the auto cloud backup page, you got the manual backup, and then you got the recovery page. And I've tried to, include the new illustrations where relevant, and also include kind of screenshots of which UI flows would go there with links to where you would find those in Figma. So yeah, that's pretty much where the page is at right now. And I just wanted to get some thoughts on this before I start, turning this into commits in an actual PR. But so I'll go through your comments, Christoph, and see what you had to say.
Yeah. No, I think overall it's really good, especially how the recovery aspect is much more thought out and fleshed out than what's currently live, which is just really minimal. Or placebo page, I guess, placeholder page. So yeah, all on board with it. And you did share your process, so it's nothing surprising in there either.
I haven't had time to have a good look over the doc yet, but I will in the morning. But if you want to get the PR up, like you can do that first, and I can go over it when the PR's up as well. Like either's fine with me.
Okay.
I was wondering if I talked to Bosch about it too. If you wanted to, if the John's technique, review technique, trademarked, would be handy, which is where we get on a call and we actually together read through the page from top to bottom, because it just like puts you in a different perspective. your content.
Yeah, sure.
And if that's something you would find useful, we can happy to help. If not, then also good.
Yeah, if somebody wants to do that, I'm down to do that.
I reckon when we wrap this milestone up, we should do these jam sessions once a week and just do that in those.
Yeah, let's talk about it at the end. That's the spirit, Jones. Yeah. Okay, so are we good with this one? So your next step is, what are your next steps, Stephen? What do you want to do? What do you want from us?
Basically, just anyone who wants to provide feedback, leave feedback on it, and then unless somebody has life-changing feedback that I've had this like major oversight and missed something critical, I think this will be a PR like today or like maybe Wednesday.
Yep.
Sometime this week. I got to figure things out, but unless little tiny comments here and there aren't going to derail the PR at this point. So, honestly, I think I'm probably just going to go ahead and start putting it into the code anyways. I'm just going to go ahead and start putting it into the actual Markdown document anyways, just in advance of people giving me feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seemed like there were some of these image carousels where you kind of had to figure out the structure, like with the recovery, where you have multiple flows in parallel.
Oh, yeah. I'm not too... I think I did leave some comments in there, like I was a little unsure what to do there, but I think I can figure that out. The basic gist here, I'll pull it up into Figma so we can take a look at it. I don't think it's too...
You have something in your head. Oh, you want to go about it?
Yeah, and just what I was saying is like I planned out this flow and kind of like exhaustive detail, trying to think about like all the different error states that could go wrong. Do we really want to show every single one of those error states? I don't know if we necessarily need to do that, but it's good that we have them. And like for example, like on the first page of the stock, like the very beginning of this process, we have the complete prototype. That's ultimately what this milestone is building up to, right? And so some of these screens can live inside of this prototype, even if they're not on the page itself. So, it's basically just like, if you're trying to restore your wallet, you type in your recovery phrase, and then if everything goes well, it should pull the channel back up automatically from the cloud, restore it, and you're good to go. And that's a basic recovery flow for this kind of wallet. It starts to get more complicated if you run into this like error state where the wallet is incapable of automatically pulling the channel backup from the user's cloud backup. Maybe they're logged into a different iCloud account than they were last time, or they, chose to be super cypherpunk and used Nextcloud, or I don't know. But the point is, so then there's like this kind of alternate flow where they can kind of manually define, where they're pulling their channel backup from. And even down to the point where if they just have completely lost the channel backup, like there's no chance of even finding it on cloud, the LSP will essentially attempt to restore the wallet by force closing the channels. So there's a lot of different things that could go wrong when you're trying to restore this mobile Lightning node. But I think like 95% of people are just going to be going through this top flow right up here. That's what we want, at least.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. With the sending page, I also had some error states at the bottom, some that were more representative, because there are just so many technical things that could possibly go wrong. It's incredibly difficult to figure out. I think this one is easier to sort out. There are just a few decision points, few things that can go wrong. It'd be cool to show it in the page, but that's also something where we could say, well, show one, and then, hey, for more states and the overall flow, click through to the Figma where it's all laid out like this.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't see any of this as wasted effort, because it's like even if I don't include all these on the page, it can just live inside of the final prototype Figma file. So I'm not too worried about it.
Can't hear you, Bosch, if you're...
Oh, sorry, I think I was on. You could also utilize that new video feature we're introducing. Like if you wanted to make a quick 2-minute video just walking through it and being like, this could happen, rather than just detailing it on the page. It's another option to consider.
Oh, that's kind of fun. I think we've, I remember talking about that a while back. The idea of adding videos into some of the pages, that could be neat.
Yeah, I think it might be useful for those scenarios where there's like 10 different ways that it could kind of go, rather than just detailing it, because we have these kind of linear carousels. It's hard to kind of illustrate the multitudes of paths that a user could take. A video would be easier to kind of cover that, and having someone talk over it's a bit easier too, I find.
Yeah, Bosch and Mo, you've been doing these interviews with people about the guide. Did they say anything particular about videos or stuff that they want to see more or less of?
Nothing on the lines of videos. People did say I mentioned to Christoph earlier, people wanted more like fine-tuned case studies and like breakdowns of other apps and stuff like that. There was a few people that have mentioned that. We've only interviewed 5 people, but that probably came up 4 of the times. One of the questions we asked towards the end is like, what would you find valuable in the guide? Or I just mentioned a few like random topics. Case studies seem to be a big one, but yeah. What were you going to say, Matt?
Yeah, that was the case studies. There were particularly 3 types of case studies. So this is going a little bit off topic, but I'll just point them out very, very quickly. So Diana wanted case studies with regards to how do open source projects actually work together collaboratively. Julissa was actually looking for specific case studies with regards to done on wallets themselves. And who was the third person? The HAC, the clown. He wanted specifically to know how the UI kit was used in other projects. And he wanted case studies about that. So those are 3 very different types of case studies. But yeah.
Okay. So only the one specific, the second one really applies to the guide, I guess. So I guess we have a page about open design to which we could, and I understand that's what Albi is trying to do, really to excel at this open collaboration and set up structure where they have the internally good process, but also allow for open collaboration. So that's probably where that comes from. That is a good one. And specific to wallets, it would be interesting to hear what exactly they're looking for.
Yeah, I'm having a call with Julissa next week, Friday, so I could get more information there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody does competitive research when they start doing some designs. Like, hey, how does the wallet everybody knows do this stuff to learn? Maybe that's cool, but that'd be cool to hear. Yeah. Okay. How about we?
Yeah, I don't have anything else to share on this. I've got enough to move forward.
Oh, there might be something. Julissa did mention the word insights. And that is specific to case studies. But she was interested in insights. It almost felt a little bit like when she's on a page, she's really looking to just get some quick bullet points about what we're talking about and what are the main points. I don't know if Bosch also got that feeling, but she was just, I think people are scanners. They just want, give me the meat and let me walk away with that so I can use it in my project. They might not want to read the whole page, but yeah.
Add a TLDR to every page.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to, it's tricky. Like, Stephen, you just have the backup and recovery fresh in your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of ways to TLDR them? It's like, make users backup stuff. Is that the TLDR?
Yeah.
Like, how do you TLDR it?
I mean, yeah, it's complicated. It's hard. I mean, let me put it this way: I can think of I can think of probably 3 or 4 like bullet points, or probably that you could say about such a page. You could say like like one bullet point would probably be it's super important for the user to back up. Like if you're not encouraging the backup, you're not helping them safeguard their funds. And then another bullet point could be like auto cloud backup is a good way to help users safeguard their funds, or is a good way to help them kind of back up without like going through that initial hard step that's time consuming. And then, a third one, I mean, make sure the user understands there's no password reset. So I could distill it down into like 3 TLDRs. Absolutely. The problem would be, I think, is like being able to go through and see the different UI flows and see how that's actually represented in the UI. If someone's just skimming the page, they're not going to like get all of that detail necessarily. So I could totally distill a concept like this down into like 3 or 4 main takeaways, but they're going to miss out on a lot of the nuance and detail in the page, I think.
Yeah,
Jalissa's
was actually useful.
Jalissa's was like, I guess it makes sense why she was scanning, because she was just looking for tidbits, because they're like a custodial wallet. So like a lot of these complexities that Stephen's kind of outlining in the backups isn't really an issue when you're dealing with a wallet like that. So she was just looking for, like she mentioned, how it really helped like onboard her and like kind of educate her around Lightning and the various concepts. Like one thing she mentioned was around she was calling Lightning invoices Lightning addresses for a long time, and just like that little tidbit there she picked up from the guide and said she changed that because that was incorrect and confuses people.
She also was like, she wanted to see case studies where I think, the whole research was done, but then she could use those insights to go back to her team and say, well, look, that's what they did in this wallet, and that was like the end result that they got. That's why I think it was almost like she wanted to use the case studies to justify her reasoning for design decisions or that kind of thing. So
I heard that before too.
Yeah.
Like a sanity check type of deal. Yeah, I guess what I was wondering is, so there are 2 activities. There's one, the guide is 50, 60 pages. What's relevant to me? Which requires a bunch of scanning, right? Until you stumble across something. And if it's very obvious, like I'm designing exactly a daily spending wallet that's self-custodial, then okay, everything will be. Or maybe it's I'm looking at sending, which doesn't matter that much, like what your setup is. Then yeah, I could just look at that page. But if it's very different, then you have to really get really picky. And so there's one, like the hunting and gathering, and the second part of that would be, is a TLDR only wanted to figure out whether the page is relevant to me or not, or because I don't like reading the page, I would watch a 3-minute video, but I have a hard time, or I don't want to read this whole thing. Like the format doesn't work for me. Like, please make it easier for me.
Could be. And when you say format, is that what Diana said, which was also very funny, because we asked her, so do you actually go to the actual Bitcoin Design Guide website itself? No, I just ask in the Slack, and Christoph just posts a link, and then the link sends me to the Bitcoin Design Guide. Oh, okay. So why don't you actually go to the Bitcoin Design Guide website itself? I don't know. Well, I guess I should.
Okay. Maybe that's helpful there. Like, let me Google that for you, lmgty.com or whatever it's called. Let me design guide that for you.
Let me design guide that for you. Nice one. So
there could be a chat bot that you add to your Slack or your Discord channel, and it like scans, it like sits there waiting for questions that seem relevant, and it tries to match that with like something that's been indexed from the design guide's like search data, and so then it just like automatically posts like a link as a response.
Yeah.
Or we just add that bot.
If it doesn't find anything, it uses GPT-3 to create an answer and DALL-E to create some visuals.
Okay. But yeah, I thought that was interesting what you mentioned about the hunting and gathering versus the I need the content more concise, Christoph, because maybe instead of thinking about it as a TLDR, if it's that first one, if it's just a matter of trying to figure out if the content's relevant to me, it could just be something at the top of the page like on this page, you will learn ... bullet point 1, bullet point 2, bullet point 3. And so it's not like trying to summarize the page into 3 points. It's just like very clearly telling you, making sure that first text at the top of the page clearly tells you this is what you're going to learn on this page.
Yeah,
And the table of contents.
It's like the what's in it for me. What's in it for me if I read this? How is it going to help me to build my product, or to speak to my team to bring forward, X, Y, Z.
I feel used now.
Christoph is full of jokes today.
Okay, yeah, but those are good ones. Let me. So I'm excited for how you have more interviews coming up, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. That'll be a good one to have an approach to. Okay, we're about 24 minutes in. Should we move on, Bosch, to the requesting and funding pages?
Yep. So we did the receiving page first, which is getting rid of the funding page. Or is the requesting page getting rid of the funding? The receiving page is getting rid of funding. And give me 2 secs. We've got daily spending wallet.
So funding was initially, okay, you have an empty wallet, let's fill it up. You can buy some Bitcoin, you can send yourself some Bitcoin. Now, partially we merged that into onboarding, first use. So it doesn't really, and we're not really talking about buying Bitcoin anymore in this reference design. So I think that's kind of why this slimmed down and disappeared now. Right?
Yeah, we're not talking about buying. So go to the funding page in that PR, which I got up, and I'm going to go through and Christoph's left a bunch of feedback, so I need to go through and review all that. So yeah, we're getting rid of the funding wallet because now we have the Lightning service page, because originally there was a lot of content explaining what those services are, where instead now throughout the daily spending wallet, we just reference that page instead of explaining it in the page. Funding is where a lot of the Lightning services kind of come into play. So there was a lot of explanations there. So we didn't need any of that. Didn't do the buying. There was a lot of manual stuff that we just wasn't really necessary as well. And the bits that are necessary, like Christoph said, are in the funding page now as well. This receiving page has tidbits and explains kind of the more important points. And there's a bunch of stuff about manual channel opening, which we're not really covering anymore. So they're the reasons why funding page doesn't exist anymore. It's still saved in the GitHub history though, so we do need it for any reason in the future. We can recover it. So it's going to be first use. Was it second? Let me just get the PR up. Yeah,
Were
first
you trying
use. Sorry?
Oh, sorry. Were you trying to show us something? Or...
No. I was just scanning the page, just
just making sure. I wasn't sure.
Refreshing my memory why. So yeah, we've got no funding page anymore. The receiving page PR's up. It's pretty much finished. I'm just going to go over Christoph's feedback. Me and Christoph had a bit of a call earlier, and there is a possibility that this may just go into the requesting page like it was before, and then just have the requesting, but not too sure just yet. Just finishing off the requesting page, which I'll get to after this. And then I'll kind of decide if it makes sense to merge them. If the page is getting too big, I'll just keep it separate. Because I know Pav brought up that keeping receiving separate confused him a bit, but I was kind of explaining to Christoph earlier, the receiving, requesting, receiving, and sending are have distinct UX aspects when it comes to Lightning, as particularly Bitcoin, because the receiving stage actually has some user interaction in some capacity anyways. For example, the app needs to notify the user to be online, things like that, so they can receive the payment. But I also do cover that in the requesting page. I know there's a section that says people should keep the app open when they generate and share a request. So maybe it's not necessary to need that. As well, receiving, we need to kind of detail swaps, how they work with on-chain receiving, particularly because we're talking about unified QR codes that generally have a swap address. So the receiving page kind of covers that. It's a pretty small page. And also cover refunds, which if the swap fails and you need to get a refund, it's a bit of a edge case, but it can happen. I pretty much have some frames done up in the same manner that Breeze deals with refunds for swaps, which is pretty much like a notification pops up, you click on it, it has like some details about the refund, and there's just a big button that says you can claim this refund, and you just have to enter an address, and it just pulls it from Breeze into an address you control. But it's a bit of a weird thing because they do temporarily, like if the swap kind of fails, I think the swap server maybe has temporary custody or something like that. I'm not exactly 100% on how the swap smart contract deals with failed swaps. So yeah, I need to actually go dive into those docs a little bit more. But yeah, the Sheaf page.
Don't go too technical or crazy on this. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, I'm trying not to go too technical, but I feel like I need to understand like why, like if it's custodial or not. I just wanted to kind of know. Like I'm not even sure if it is with Breeze. Like they don't really explain it anywhere. But and then yeah, receive payment. So that's pretty much it. I'd say this will be done this week. The requesting page is almost done, and I'd say like I'm going to edit the changes in the receiving PR when I get that PR up, and they should both be ready for review in the next few days. I know I said that a few times before, but I just kept rewriting stuff and changing stuff and getting bogged down in probably a whole lot of unnecessary detail that I didn't need to go into. But that's the receiving page. Sorry, what were you going to say, Christoph?
I was going to ask what the other thoughts are on this idea of the reusable payment requests. Here in the current page, they're called payment addresses too. And what you did here is that there's a separate. It's not part of the home screen. Like the home screen is, I'm going to type in an amount. I'm going to share a QR code. Somebody pays me right away. Very simple. That the reusable payment addresses, like I share something, I put it on my Twitter profile or on my website or so. It's going to be there. I'm not sending it to someone. Maybe I'm sending it to my boss and they'll pay me there. But they're valid for a very long time. That those should be separately managed in the application somewhere. I create a request. It's going to be in my list of these payment addresses for a long time. That they're out of the way of this main flow of this home screen. And because of that they could actually be on their own page to describe those use cases more. And one of the problems with them is that we don't have both 12 yet. This reference design doesn't support LN URL. So the only payment address that really exists is on-chain addresses, which we don't really want to use either. So it kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a weird space that this feature lives in right now.
You can do your AMP invoices now.
Are those broadly spread?
No, I think Zeus uses them. That's about it.
Yeah.
And you generate them.
Which of the wallets actually have these saved contacts option? Is
No.
it in Breeze and in Phoenix, or is it just doesn't even exist? Because
Well, contacts is different than payment addresses.
okay,
The contacts is people that you send stuff back and forth, but these are payment addresses you create for yourself. Let's say you want to collect donations for, I don't know, your cat shelter. You generate this address just for that purpose, and you put that on your cat shelter website, and then tips will come in. So it's like an address you created for that particular purpose in some particular format. Because by default, Lightning invoices, they expire 24 hours or so. So here's like, and you want to track that separately in the app somehow. You want to see the activity, the payments come in your transactions list, but you still want to somehow manage this type of address.
and then
And contact is like, that's like where somebody sends you something. Let's say I send you something, and then you associate that with me, my address, and that payment you associate it with my face, name, whatever it is. That's a little bit different.
Yeah.
so is
they're
that why the Lightning, at least the two Lightning wallets I have on my phone, they don't have contacts?
Nobody's really built that feature.
No, I mean
You
that
kind
would be
of.
so.
Johns has been pushing that for years.
It just makes
Contact
so much of
abstractions.
sense.
Well, you kind of need a like mainstream adoption of a payment address, like a reusable payment address, because at the moment we're still using single-use stuff. So like you need a payment address to make contacts useful. You could save other stuff in there as well, like just the person's name and payment history, which is still useful. But yeah, I think they really shine when you can save like payment addresses in them and stuff like that.
I don't think it's dependent on like these reusable payment addresses though. Or like some form of wallet messaging is something else that you could do without payment addresses, like these reusable ones. Just locally stored because you want to like keep a catalog of like the different identifiers that you have for someone. You want to generate like a 12 addresses for someone to use. Like there's still uses in there. If someone gives you 12 addresses, then you save them. There's still uses.
Yeah, there's still uses, and I mean, I think being able to, just have like, hey, here's all of my transaction history. I've got 100 transactions over the past, 4 months here. Then being able to kind of cross-link the data and say, okay, these 10 transactions here went to this entity, and this 5 went to this entity. Context list is certainly useful for that.
Yeah, 100%.
However, I think I agree with the general assessment, though, that we were talking about earlier, which is that the thing that's really hindering the major adoption of these contact list thing is this idea that we don't really have a standard for the reusable payment requests. There's a lot of different ideas. You got LNURL, you got Lightning address on top of that, you got Bolt 12 offers, AMP, all these, and there's not like 100% industry support for every single one of these. And so I think we think about contact lists. Yes, I agree. They are useful for these other things, like just being able to categorize transactions. But when we think about a contact list conceptually, we think about contacting, making contact, doing something actionable. So in the form of email, you go to your contact list, you send them an email. In the form of a chat application, you go to your contact list, you send them a chat. In the form of a calendar, you go to your contact list, you send them a calendar invite. In the form of a Bitcoin wallet, you go to your contact list, you send them some Bitcoin, right? Like that's kind of, I think, the base feature is that you use your contacts in the contact list to actually do something with that contact. And because we don't have a 100% agreed upon industry-wide standard for reusable payment requests, it makes it kind of dulls or dampens that primary use case of a contact list. So, I mean, that's not to say a wallet can't implement it and that they shouldn't do that. I think that's wonderful if wallets want to go ahead and building these kind of UI abstractions today. I think that's the primary feature that I think is missing.
I can see it being maybe very handy if for merchants as well, because like if you're going to use your wallet to pay those standard people, I don't know, that supply you with, I don't know, the rice or whatever, then you pay that supplier every single month, and then you have them built into your contacts list, and it's as easy as a couple of clicks and it's paid. So
absolutely,
because they're going to have to be going back and looking each time for the address.
Yeah, technically for a daily spending wallet, we're just not there yet. That's how things will be though, hopefully in a few years.
I 100% agree with you, Mo. It's like that's useful for. I mean, I can imagine hundreds of use cases for it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that to me, it's not a design challenge. It's I think it's largely a technical challenge of getting widespread adoption of a given format. Because we can design beautiful user interfaces for contact lists and reusable payment requests, and we should. Many of us are doing that, but even beyond, like once you get that UI built, it's still this challenge of like actually getting that, being able to click that contact and say, boom, send them Bitcoin.
So even the Lightning wallets now that are like merchant focused wallets, they don't have contacts lists in them.
Further research needed.
A thing has a contact. We call it BTC Pay Server has contacts in some kind of form.
Okay.
Also, Alby has contacts, but they're called websites. it functions the same and the design pattern is kind of similar.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and bringing it back to the question then is, should requesting Bitcoin purely focus on I generate an invoice, I send it to someone, they pay me, and all this reusable stuff, should that be a separate dedicated page? And should there be, just like here in my background, separate page in the application to manage those? And that is more forward-looking than with Bolt 12 offers and other stuff.
Yeah. They're connected, so it feels a bit like, but it still feels like, since the contact option is so new, and as you guys mentioned, is it not in any wallet interface at the moment? So this is really forward thinking, this design.
Blake's just trying. Or sorry, go ahead.
But this has nothing to do with contacts. This is you generating more addresses for yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'll read through this page in much more detail, and give a more informed opinion. What I'm leaning towards now is like, it might be a good idea to have it on a separate page, but like it is conceptually related to, it's conceptually related to this topic in the same way that like the backup and recovery page, like all those topics are conceptually related. So it could easily be like a sub page. It could be like requesting Bitcoin, and the sub page is, reusable payment requests or something like that. And I think that we just have to talk about this idea that it's like, this is hypothetical. We're assuming a future where this, there's some kind of agreed upon industry standard, or or something like that. But I think the content is worth discussing at some point, and I'll read through it and give a more informed opinion later.
I'm going to post a big update on it tomorrow, so I'll ping you when I do that. So don't read it just yet, because it's going to change quite a bit. But yeah, I was probably just going to focus on like covering all the nuances of just a standard flow that we're familiar with. There'll also be unified QR codes in there, so that's looking forward a bit. No one has that adopted either, so there'll be details on that. And then maybe just have like a very small section on payment addresses with a very simple example, and then later on we can maybe have sub pages on the requesting that outline more specific use cases for requesting, like tipping or donations or salary, where you want to there's a bunch of different kind of ways you should kind of go about that. A lot of details that you should kind of work out, but we can get to that later. I'll just do that on the requesting page for now, and then we can get to that stuff later on. We'll wrap this milestone up, because that's where I was getting real bogged down on this page. I kept going into all these hypothetical use cases and be like, you could do this, and like this area of the app could be for your tips, and this could be your different area for your payment addresses, and this could be your quick share payment address. And there was lots of different ways you could create, share them, and it just started getting a bit jangled up. I had a call with Christoph earlier, and I was just like, I just need to just take a step back and remove a lot of the fat and put that stuff elsewhere. But I've got a lot of content written around those topics, which is good, so we can use that later on when we get there.
Well, the cool thing about the daily spending wallet is that now that we're conceptualizing the guide around these reference designs and all of that, that makes every reference design kind of like its own hypothetical product. And now that it's a hypothetical product, just like a real world product, we can ship updates to it every once in a while. It's like, hey, every couple months, Cash App, might roll out a new feature, and it's like, hey, check out our new feature we just shipped. Now it's the same way with the daily spending wallet. We can just ship new features to it.
We can create fake product announcements too.
I was kind of hoping.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mind marking. Surprised no one's come along and started building a daily spending wallet since we've been working on this and use the guide heavily. I kind of thought someone would have done that by now.
Daniel,
you might discover that in the phone calls. You never know.
Daniel's doing that with BDG.
Yeah, Daniel's doing it with BDG. Keen to see what Synonym's doing. I know John's a big fan of the guide, so maybe they would have got it influence. But they're doing a lot of different weird stuff with tokens and stuff like that as well, so it'd be quite different, I think.
Okay, cool. And yeah, just reach out if you want any more conversation, collaboration, anything else. I'm always happy
Yeah.
to.
Apologies for taking so long to get that done. I did not think it would take so long, but just
Yeah, I think we really underestimated the complexity of and the depth that we're getting into with some of these things.
yeah. There's just no real I guess because it's all just kind of going in the dark. There's no real examples to kind of work off with a lot of the stuff I was kind of going into. So I was just going off on tangents a little bit, exploring lots of probably things that aren't super relevant.
Because I think when you build a real product, you have this back and forth between building, using, designing, getting feedback, and it just kind of takes you step by step. And when we like what we're doing here, we're just kind of theoretically building a product in a way. That there's a level of work that where we just have to imagine how this wallet works and what it does and what problems we'll run into. That does make it a little bit trickier because you just can't just use it, right? Simulate an error and see what happens. You're just gonna have to fill in gaps, just like in that GIF that Steven just
A
showed.
random question that came to my mind is, do you guys have by any chance like something around error messages in the design guide?
Hold my beer.
There's a few throughout.
Or is that kind of spread out around in different okay.
This is for the sending page at the bottom. Like here's success if it works
You found
out,
it
and then
first.
here are errors that.
Yeah, it's super hard to cover everything. Like a real nuance error that I was like, I'm not going to explore on the requesting page is when you generate a unified QR code. If you've got a swap address in there and the Lightning Wallet server's not updated, what happens? Because then you can't get the swap address from the Lightning server because it's controlled by them and they give it to you when you generate a request. So like, what do you do then? Like, how do you present that error? But I guess you could just, it's like there's so many like weird fringe errors that I don't think we've covered in the guide, but it's I think
Yeah, so that's exactly with the sending page. What I did here at the bottom, I picked one error and mocked up a couple different ways to handle it, or there are two ones, and also described what to do, how to design good error states. So, let people know that their funds are safe. First thing, or here's something went wrong. Your funds are safe. Here's what happened. Here's what you can do about it. Or if it can't be fixed automatically, copy this information, send it to this email, paste it into this Telegram. Just have clear explanations, just how to handle this stuff basically without actually mocking up all of the different error states, because I feel like that's where the individual teams will know best what type of things happen, and then the guide can still help them with an example and how to go about designing something like this. We could probably add a few more of these, but I really don't think we need to cover every single.
No, I think there's too many.
Happen.
If you do errors on every single screen state, then it's that's.
I also don't think that that's super useful.
No, it's not useful. It's also something else to think about is a good interface is forgiving. So this is a human characteristic. So I don't know, when you're in your Gmail, for example, I know probably you guys don't have Gmail for privacy reasons, but if you're in your Gmail and you are trying to delete something, Gmail will ask you, are you sure you want to do that? So the interface is helping the user to not make mistakes. That's another form in the whole error sphere of things, which is also interesting.
Yeah, don't delete that data, otherwise we can't track you anymore to target ads. Yeah, that's also a good one. Yeah, just how to think about it and how to go about these with some examples. I think that's enough. But it can be helpful to point out, let's say, what type of errors can happen. Okay, LSB errors, swap errors, internet connectivity, without having to go into every single one. Okay, all good with requesting and funding? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's
Then-
anything else you need to bring up.
Okay, so privacy page revision, something I'm working on. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this one. Privacy is super complicated, and it can get so bogged down, this conversation, which has to do with, it's like you can try to do your best at privacy and still never know if you're actually doing a good job. So that came out of a lot of the join market conversations. Yeah, you can do a bunch of coin joins and hope it helps, but you will never actually know. Like, you have no idea if somebody else found a way to piece this stuff back together again. You just won't. It's like, we don't know if our data's out there or not, and how much Google knows about us, right? You can do your best, and maybe it works, maybe it didn't. So that makes it tricky. And then the other aspect is the mixing up of different things. So I split it up. I started with real world privacy. So that's existing content. It's still in there. I just moved it up, where it's like, you use your wallet in public. I was at the beer garden last week, and they accepted Lightning, and the lady was paying with Moon, and I could see her balance, right? That type of stuff. Then it's third-party services. So your wallet integrates with an LSP. It gets currency exchange data from somewhere. It talks to other services. Stuff can leak. Yeah. Then there's the data transfer itself. Stuff gets routed through your internet service provider. That can be, you can use Tor to cloak things a little bit. And both of these things are problems that every application has. It's not unique. And then it goes into Lightning Network and Bitcoin Network, which, I don't know, there's also, I reworded, I rephrased a few things, added some details, but it's really not that much, because I kind of eliminated, there are links at the bottom here, like the Bitcoin privacy wiki. It has like, I don't know if you can see this here, but there's like a million examples. Like, if you want a breakdown of like how your privacy can be messed with, like when withdrawing casino winnings to a Bitcoin exchange without either entity knowing the source or destination of funds. Like, there's just tons of details in here, which we don't really need to cover. So yeah, I don't know. Please take a look. Let me know what's missing, if all of this stuff makes sense, if it's too shallow, if it's good enough. I'm not really sure.
To generate a new address for each on-chain payment might not be super relevant for the daily spending wallet, because people will probably be using swaps, which are generated by the Lightning Wallet server, which use a new one each time. I think they have to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit, yeah.
Yeah, generally I like the direction of the like trying to create a framework around it where like people could like have something to test like their mental model around. So like real world privacy, third party services, data transfer, the Lightning and Bitcoin network. I think that's a good model to look at it as a bit more user friendly than what was there before. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I'll provide some comments, some more comments as I go through it though.
I know with third-party services, like with Lightning Wallet servers, you can actually get some privacy, whatever that means, by using them, because you're essentially using their UTXOs, not yours, which can give you not privacy from them, but privacy from other third parties like chain analysis companies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A little tidbit.
Well, that's the trick too. You know, I put this real world privacy at the top, because that's stuff where we can show mockups. The user has choices they can make. They see stuff. With some of the other things, it's like the application developers need to take care of it, or the backend engineers and the application architects.
I think that also, just I'm looking here that it says, but keep in mind that using Tor provides better privacy but can noticeably slow down the experience, especially initial startup. That was something that Bosch mentioned as well with regards to Zeus, and that being one of the major complaints that they got from users, like, why is this so slow? So I wonder, if I'm looking at the screen here that says connect via Tor. Is that when you would activate Tor, or
Yep.
it might be useful to mention something that affects their user experience, because if they make a decision and it affects the user experience, then
Yeah. So I have the text in here, private but less stable connection, which I believe I took from Phoenix Wallet or some other wallet, because I found it was pretty well worded.
Yeah, just to say that it's
it's a more shaky connection, which then I don't know if it's less stable means that sometimes there can be interruptions.
Glitchy,
some data doesn't get through. I'm not sure whether that's the thing or it's just slower, or both.
Yeah, it's a very polite way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but please leave your feedback. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll give you a PR review.
Thank you very much. And then after, we're going to wrap up all these pages this week, next week or something. And then Bosch, you were asking anything else about any pages, or should we use last few minutes to talk about something Bosch mentioned earlier, having more calls?
I'd like to mention with regards to the one that's been assigned to me, which has no milestone add personas. There was a message thread about that on Slack. And you mentioned contacting the other UX researcher because he was also going through Patricia's research. So I kind of tagged him in that question, and then I really haven't heard much. So I've messaged Diana now from Albi, who said that she would like to contribute personas to the design guide. And she's just messaged me with saying that she's doing a workshop tomorrow with the team, and that she'd be happy to have a UX research call on it maybe in the next 2 weeks. So I think that that's kind of the way I'm going to approach that.
Yep, sounds good. And, I see Paolo, he mentioned there, but I think he said he wanted to do it, and then he hasn't done anything for 3 months. I think you can basically it's good to ask, but basically assume nothing will happen.
Yeah,
and
so
just
I'll just go ahead
just do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and you did ask there, so good. Yeah, that would be good. I think there's a lot of content. It just needs to be wrapped up and packaged nicely.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Love seeing that one. Okay, Bosch, you asked about the weekly call. My counter proposal there would be keep the bi-weekly calls, but just have more casual work sessions where each of us says, hey, I want to sit with somebody and just read through the page, or can we get together and work in Figma for an hour or something more along these lines? Because the sessions as we have them right now, they're publicly announced, they're like a little bit more formal, they're recorded and uploaded. And we don't really do work in this. We talk about the work. What would be the most helpful for you?
Yeah, just doing drop-ins, I guess. I can just post in general. I'm keen to, whether it's you guys or just someone in the community to read through the page. I guess I'd find that beneficial just to see if it makes sense to them. Because you work on something for so long, it's easy to get caught up in it and think it makes sense, and it really doesn't.
Yeah, I think the benefit of doing these individual ones is, so I also just created this pull request for a sign in with Bitcoin page. And so I just sent it to Ed because he's working on an article series on this topic. And I sent it to Boomi because he's a super mega expert on this topic too, where if you organize your own calls and work sessions, you can pull in, if you can get a hold of them, if you know someone, you can pull in people that will ideally help you with exactly the thing that you're looking for. Like this LSP stuff. You could ask Roy if he has half an hour or so to spare and hop in for a topic, and that could be provides a bit more flexibility too. Get some experts.
Yeah, I need to look over it, but keen to have a look. Signing with Bitcoin's cool. Not
No, I
super
mean, just
sold on that.
generally about reaching out to specific people for feedback.
Did you guys see that Apple FIDO Alliance article that I linked the other day? They're random. It was in random on Slack,
one?
but
The passkeys.
yeah, the passkeys. So it's supposed to be using like the whole open FIDO standard, which is interesting. Like, but I've always felt weird about signing with Bitcoin. Like signing in with a wallet feels kind of weird. But now that Apple's doing this, like I feel like I don't know.
I mean, the idea is that the authentication is the route, is the entry point for payments. That it's not that a wallet does not be turned into a password manager that you use for everything, but you create this trust connection with the idea that you will make payments at some point. Like with Stacker News or so, it's kind of implicit that payments are baked into the application, and that's why it makes sense to log in with your wallet. Like if I logged in with username and email, I still couldn't make payments. It'd be kind of useless.
But you don't need to make that connection though to make a payment to like Stacker News.
Oh yeah, but it's just smoother. It's more direct. Like you use the same mechanism. Yeah, you could use two different systems too. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it makes sense in the context of Stacker News and that.
Yeah.
I just feel like people will think it's like associating their money with like logging a website, like even though it's private, it just feels like you're like giving them your info about your wallet, like even though I know that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
To a novice, I could see them feeling that way.
Yeah, that's a design challenge to hear about explaining what sign-in means. I think when you use some like Ethereum wallet, it can actually tell your balance, I think, which I'm not sure if it might be able to. But with WebLN, I don't think it can.
Yeah, we are working on a spec to like called WebBTC to try to make that a bit more kind of verbose. But permissioning is a big question on there. It's like what data can the application see, and is the user in control of that? I think another topic that's like adjacent to this is what are you logging into, and what does that profile look like? So, for instance, on Bolt Fund, we don't ask for usernames, we don't ask for email address. We do ask for a Lightning address, but that's required if you want to receive tips. Now, like with this, it's kind of like bringing us into the direction of like, yes, you can generate these random Bitcoin keys in order to log in, like create a new identity essentially to be able to log into a service or sign into a service. You can throw it away at any point in time, and hopefully that service follows design patterns that don't force the user to kind of like dox themselves, because those things aren't necessarily needed. And I guess another one is like, do you need to sign, like what functions do you need to sign in for, right? So if you're only like voting on Stacker News or something, like do you need to sign into this? I don't think it should be necessary, right? But if you want to kind of like interact with something that like a comment or something that requires some kind of spam prevention mechanism, then you might say like, hey, please do this other thing with assignments.
Yeah, I hope at some point we all have a lot of that stuff in this sign in with Bitcoin page, and maybe there could be sub pages to describe some of this stuff. But But yeah, I mean, the main reason to create this page was actually the first Bolt Fun hackathon, where it seems like every team had to create this from scratch. It just seemed like an opportunity. It's like people are gonna have to reinvent this wheel all the time. Let's just put something out there and then see what happens. Anyways, so we're a little bit over an hour. Anything else to chat? Should we just try to keep an eye out, collaborate closely, give each other lots of feedback this week, next week or so, or anything else?
Yeah, I'll probably reach out to get you guys to read the requesting page. Maybe over the next, probably Thursday, maybe like, I know it's hard for you guys in the US, but I might hit you, Christoph, up because it's always a bit easier in that like afternoon time for me, like similar to the time we had the call earlier on today. Maybe I'll hit you up for Thursday. I'll let you know tomorrow. Keen for that though.
And Stephen, you need to move to Europe. Then Bosch moves, and then we'll all be somewhat close.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Centralizing force here.
Just an idea that I was thinking about was obviously I'm still early in the research stage now, so things are still being generated and coming up and insights and stuff, but eventually to think about a little bit later down the line is how and where